On one hand, he was an active participant in various forums for programmers, but on the other, a thick-skinned, unprincipled troll. These were the distant times when the internet was free from any restrictions, and therefore was the most toxic place on Earth. He was flesh of his time, meaning he was an aggressive jerk. He called Australia a useless country that could drown, believing nothing would change in the world. He wrote racist comments about Jews, threatened to kill other users. In short, he went all out.
But it's unclear how sincere Paul LaRue was in his statements. No one knows, but many years ago.
He claimed he wrote notices purely for entertainment, and the more aggressive the response, the more he enjoyed it.
Nevertheless, beneath the mask of an internet troll, one could discern his true views, which led him without hesitation to enter the world beyond the law. Firstly, LaRue repeatedly wrote that drugs should be legalized. Secondly, he was outraged that the digital era was taking away people's freedom. Banks and governments could monitor every step people took.
In the future, LaRue would prove practically that these were not just empty words for him.
In 1998, E4M emerged for hard drives, a code LaRue wrote alone, from scratch, which still poses a problem for hackers. Initially, he didn't try to monetize it, instead releasing the program freely on the internet with open source code. Additionally, he published a manifesto where he opposed E4M to a government project called Echelon, aimed at collecting data on citizens. He wrote that in the real world, the fight for privacy has long been lost, as more and more human activity moves online. Governments fight to preserve their powers, and reliable encryption is a mechanism to help preserve your rights and guarantee freedom in the information age.
And behind the loud words, truly like quality software. Okay, according to Snowden, Americans still couldn't hack the encrypted disk programmed by LaRue even 15 years after its creation.
Well, this cutting-edge development brought no money to its creator. By that time, he had a small IT company, but it was constantly on the verge of bankruptcy. In 1999, LaRue divorced his wife and moved to the Netherlands, where he quickly remarried. There he attempted to earn again from E4M and opened a firm for outsourcing programming. Interestingly, one of the main services of the company was remote encryption setup on clients' computers. A year later, one of the clients, Wilfred Hafner, invited him to work in his startup. Hafner planned to create a commercial version of the program, offering LaRue the position of chief developer. Later, Hafner recalled that at that time, LaRue was broke, living in a tiny apartment with his wife and child, driving a beat-up car. When he arrived for the interview at Hafner's luxurious home in southern France, he was struck by his wealth and boldly stated that he wanted to have everything the same. However, their collaboration didn't last long. In 2002, LaRue was disgracefully fired for creating a parallel program identical to the one he was working on for Hafner.
After such humiliation, LaRue decided never to work for anyone else again and to stop creating any innovative scenes from then on. His main goal would be make money whenever and however he could.
Firstly, he completed the project he was working on at Hafner's company. In 2004, the first version of TrueCrypt was released. The program was free and positioned as the most reliable means of data encryption. Officially, LaRue never admitted to being one of the developers, but few doubted that he was actively involved. Moreover, the program received incredibly good funding, seemingly from an unknown source, as you'll find out soon.
At around the same time, LaRue disappeared from internet forums for good because his secret business has already begun. A year before this, he posted an thinking someone with an American passport.
Then the company RX Limited appeared, offering its clients hassle-free purchase of prescription drugs. The scheme was simple and elegant. Anyone could visit the website, choose the desired medication, and fill out a symptom questionnaire. The questionnaire would reach a real doctor who prescribed the medication without ever seeing the patient in person. The prescription would then go to the designated pharmacy, and the officially prescribed drugs would be sent to the client by mail. Naturally, both the doctor and the pharmacy received a hefty percentage for this collaboration. The main income of the company came from Viagra, headache remedies with barbiturates and opioids, and a drug called Soma, containing the narcotic carisoprodol.
The scheme proved to be so profitable that soon, RX Limited had 2 large call centers in Israel. The company gimmick was that LaRue managed to find a loophole in the legislation, which states that doctors should prescribe medication based on symptoms, without specifying that the patient must be present. Therefore, many participants in the company felt they were engaging in entirely illegal activities.
Another feature of the business was advertising. The internet pharmacy was promoted through cold calls and mass spamming. To avoid spam filters, LaRue started opening new mirror sites with different domains. Eventually, he even created his own domain registrar. By 2012, half of all fraudulent pharmacies worldwide were registered through LaRue. RX Limited received tens of thousands of orders every week and had a clean profit of $5 million each month. LaRue had indeed found a gold mine, and he didn't care how many people would suffer from such a business.
But naturally he understood that he was walking on thin ice, and sooner or later, the drug enforcement authorities would come knocking.
So, in 2007, he left the Netherlands and moved his entire family to the Philippines. LaRue settled in one of the most prestigious areas of the capital, in a luxurious house with a swimming pool.
In the Philippines, he felt in a much more familiar environment of freedom. Though here, unlike in Europe, money truly ruled everything.
But it turned out that money alone wasn't enough for him anymore. Now, LaRue craved power, not as a public politician, but as the king of his own secret empire. Greed, a sense of grandiosity, and suspicion took hold of him. He saw himself as a new type of criminal, one who relied on intelligence and the opportunities of the digital world. He thought he was just like those successful startup founders who built a company in their garage and then sold it for $100 million. Literally within a year, he transformed from rags to riches and decided he could do absolutely anything. In reality, he went off the deep end and began to cosplay the lifestyle of a Bond villain.
In his office, bundles of cash were taken up to the ceiling, and now his mini state now numbered over 1,000 people.
LaRue even assembled his own army from former soldiers. Once he learned that 2 call center managers were planning to open their own pharmacy in the USA to sell his products. What did LaRue do? He lured one of the managers onto a yacht under the pretext of a business negotiation and ordered him thrown into the sea. They even started shooting at him before he could explain they misunderstood him, and their plan would benefit LaRue. In the end, they pulled the manager out of the water and threatened to kill him if he ever decided to leave the company. This wasn't just a momentary outburst of rage from LaRue. He defaultly believed that everyone around him wanted to betray him. In 2008, he even ordered his cousin's house burned down after a dispute over money. And when he sent his people for negotiations, he'd send another group to watch over the first. And not a single person in LaRue's company knew about all the operations he was behind.
So he ventured into a new field for himself, arms trade. For this, LaRue hired a former Israeli lobbyist who was involved in selling Israeli weapons, and he found a new network.
His regular clients became militias in Somalia. LaRue even planned to establish his own state within a state there, open a cocaine plantation, and maintain the bulk of his mercenaries and heavy weapons. He wanted either to overthrow the government of the Seychelles Islands or to make a base to combat Somali pirates, but in 2010 he fell out with a local commander and scrapped the project for his cocaine republic.
Then LaRue's biggest achievement in the arms trade was selling guidance system for missiles to Iran, and all the money flowed into Hong Kong, where his treasure trove was kept. I don't even know what else to call it.
LaRue literally organized warehouses with gold bars, diamonds, and silver, like some medieval count with a security detail of former elite soldiers. The wealthier he became, the more bloodthirsty he turned. For him, the only punishment for any offense was death. No man, no problem. One of the first to suffer from the changed character of the boss was his closest assistant and head of security, Dave Smith. LaRue suspected him of theft, ordered his abduction, had him taken outside the city, forced him to dig his own grave, and then shot him. It's clear that LaRue found inspiration in movies rather than real life.
Another person, Joseph Hunt, a former soldier, took over as the head of security after Smith's death. He also assisted in many murders.
The investigation against LaRue began by chance. Narcotics police made a controlled purchase of drugs on one of the RX Limited sites and unexpectedly stumbled upon a huge network distributing drugs with fake prescriptions. For a year, they couldn't figure out who was behind this business until they found Paul LaRue's phone number in one of the documents, which they immediately wiretapped. It quickly became clear that LaRue was dealing not only with legal drugs, but also with illegal substances. International forces joined the investigation, and the longer they listened to the phone, the more astonished they were at the scale of this man's activities. Selling drugs was the most innocent part. The real deal involved arms smuggling, Somali mercenaries, murders, and methamphetamine from North Korea. Authorities estimated that during the time RX Limited operated, LaRue earned over $500 million. Interestingly, even though they knew his name, they couldn't immediately figure out who this person was. LaRue began covering his tracks as early as 2008, had several fake passports, and never used his real name.
In 2011, LaRue business suffered a serious blow when the USA tightened control over the drug Soma, which accounted for a third of RX Limited income. LaRue had to close to the call center in Israel, and in the risk of safety, began smuggling contraband drugs from Mexico.
Seeing the noose tightening around his neck, he moved to Brazil because Brazil had no extradition agreement with America. For another year, the US authorities didn't know how to lure him out of there.
But eventually, they decided to play on his weaknesses, greed and ambition. The idea came from one of LaRue's former mercenaries who had a grudge against the boss for suspecting him of theft.
He revealed that LaRue had long dreamed of making a deal with Colombian drug cartels. Unable to resist such an opportunity, LaRue agreed to a meeting. However, it required flying to Liberia, which raised no suspicions since Liberia was considered the capital of African drug trafficking. Moreover, the Colombians were thoroughly checked, and everything seemed clean. But when LaRue finally arrived for the meeting in person, it turned out that the Colombian drug traffickers were actually undercover agents from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. He was arrested on the spot and flown out the same day.
Lisa has been considered one of the most important.
It's Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa.
It's Mona Lisa Day in Washington.
And Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa.
In the center of Paris, in the Louvre, behind a thick layer of bulletproof glass, is stored a small female portrait which is impossible to steal today, but once it was possible. Let's transport ourselves a century back to August 21st, 1911, a Monday at the Louvre, closed on the first day of the week, not receiving visitors. In the huge building, once the home of French kings, there is almost no one around. It's around 7:30 on the clock when a man in a white robe emerges from a small room, more like a closet where canvases are stored. He had hidden there since Sunday, entering the museum.